Encouraging, empowering, inspiring each other on this journey of faith. United in purpose, sisters in love we are. Women World Leaders.
Welcome to the Women World Leaders podcast, and I'm your host, Kimberly Hobbs. I'm the founder of Women World Leaders. We are so happy that you've joined with us today, and I would like to welcome our guest, Diane Lawbaugh. Diane, welcome.
Hi, Kimberly. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here, and everybody that's joining us, listening to the podcast. We are super excited about today's interview, which is going to be about the word understanding and Diane's newly released book, Don't Let Misunderstanding Win. And we are so excited. She is a #1 bestseller, and we are thankful for that and what God is doing in her life. And this is a chance for you to listen and just really relax and hear the words that Diane is going to teach from her heart about misunderstanding and not allowing that to win out in any relationship. God tells us that every believer has received grace gifts, so use them to serve one another as a faithful steward of the many colored tapestries of God's grace, 1 Peter 4:10. And in some relationships, we definitely need God's grace. So as we start out, I love to introduce our guest by reading their bio. So I just want to share a little bit about Diane. She was born in Canada, and she met and married her handsome American husband, who remains her favorite human after 4+ decades. That's huge. Diane is an international best-selling author. She's a graduate of Westervelt College, a professional administrator, an event planner, a singer, and a lover of all things purple. Diane's joy is connecting people with hope, one another, and a better quality of life. And to support this passion, she achieved her facilitator's certification with Theotherapy, Sozo, and HeartSync. Most recently, she added her mastery and certification training in PAX Programs Incorporated, investing over 1,300 hours in research training and teaching to help men and women appreciate their differences rather than see those differences as obstacles. And in 2020, Diane published her first book, Connecting the Present to the Past to Find Hope for Your Future. She is a contributing author in the international bestsellers by Women World Leaders titled Miracle Mindset and Unshakable, all available on Amazon. Diane's ideas of fun include long walks, couch picnics with her husband, romantic comedies, and all things NFL. And she is always cheering for her Tennessee Titans. So you can reach Diane at diane@hopewithoutlimits.com. And she'll give that again at the end of our podcast. So Diane, I always like to start out with hearing a little bit about your story and letting the listener just kind of into your life a little bit. So can you tell us about that and how God led you to write the book, Don't Let Misunderstanding Win?
Sure, I'd love to. I was studying all these things about men and women understanding themselves, and I became aware of some articles on something called gray divorce. And right now it is the highest rate of divorce in our country, the USA, and specifically it's talking about people that are over 50. It's happening more and more and more. And then at the same time, I had been listening to a teaching by a group called BEMA, B-E-M-A, and they were talking about the gates of hell. And this is apparently a literal place over by the Sea of Galilee. And I was out walking one day, and Holy Spirit brought the two together for me. He was showing me that he wanted me to be on the offensive, just like he was telling his disciples. He said, don't be on the defensive. I want you to take this message about helping men and women understand one another and take it right to the gates of hell where divorce is happening, so that healing can start and hope can return to these relationships. And so I got it. That sounded very important to me. And that's about 2 years ago that I got that message. But then the reason it really rung true for me is my husband and I had been in that place. We'd been married about 37 years. And a friend of mine suggested I go to this course about helping men and women understand each other better. And I honestly didn't see any reason to go. I thought it's pointless. I looked around and I could see men and women rolling their eyes and, doing that number at one another. And I just thought, why bother? And I put up, some resistance. And she said, well, not for the two of you. What about the 1,800 men that you work with? I didn't think that was really fair. But it made a good point that it wasn't just about the two of us. It was about my life and having a better quality of life. So I signed up to go, and literally the weekend before I was supposed to leave, we were going out with another couple, and they wanted to do something the next weekend. And I said, well, I can't, I'm busy. I really didn't want to tell them what I was doing because I wasn't sure I believed in it at that time. But they kept asking questions. And finally I said, well, I'm going to a course to help men and women understand one another. Well, they literally just belly laughed and guffawed at me. Like, oh, that's never going to happen. Men and women cannot understand one another. We just have to put up with one another. And all I wanted to do was shrink into the back seat of that vehicle and disappear. I was so embarrassed. So I got home and I went back to I'm not going. So I called my friend and said, I'm not going. I just can't do this. And she said, no, you are. You told me you would, and you are. And so she's been a lifelong, a 30-year friend. And I said, okay, all right, I trust you. I had seen how it had impacted her with her sons. She's not married anymore. So I thought, okay, I will go and I will do this. And it was not so much that it's not a judgment. A lot of people think, we're judging one another. But I found out that as soon as I got home, the first night I was home after my course, it was 3 days. And they had taught us in course, about how literal men are and how to listen to them and everything. And when I walked in the door and asked my husband, just off the top of my head, well, how was your weekend? And they told me the thing I needed to do was just ask one question, not another one. Don't ask any more details. Don't rephrase it. Just put some imaginary duct tape over your mouth and listen. And because it could take him up to 30 seconds to respond. Well, he started talking at 25 seconds. And I did what you're doing, Kimberly. I was like, is this really happening? Because I haven't said anything to him. I haven't taught him anything. And as I listened, and if they pause, apparently just say, anything else? I did that. After about 20 minutes, he said, well, I think that's everything about Friday night. So I thought he was done. And I was about to jump in with another question. And he said, oh, but that was only Friday. You asked about the weekend. And he went on again for another 20 minutes about Saturday. And I was sitting there and the tumbler started to fall in place. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have been interrupting this man for 37 years. No wonder he gets frustrated with me. No wonder he snaps at me. I don't need to teach him anything about being a man. I need to get a new lens so that I can see him for who he truly is.
Wow. That is so good. And I know that you had gleaned so many tools from what you were learning then that you got just so overjoyed with all of it. So I'm going to ask you to share some of those tools, but I just wanted to share James 1:19 and what that teaches us about being quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, right? Because our thoughtful responses is what leads us to righteousness, peace, and that wisdom in interactions instead of impulsive reactions. Because I know we as women can be so impulsive when we hear something and we just right away want to get it out of our mouths. So Diane, let's start with some of those practical tools that you talked about and especially the one that you said, listening to learn. Let's talk about
Yeah,
that.
I'd love to. So listening to learn is basically what it sounds like. You want to learn about the person in front of you. And what that's contrasting with is what you were saying about our instincts. When we listen and we're just doing it surface wise, we're not being intentional, we're just, popping off. What happens is that with men, they get dissed a lot, and it's not fair that they can only think about one thing at a time, and that they're commitment phobe and all these things. And it's just not true. The reason it takes them so long to respond is because they are so committed. They do not want to give you an answer that they can't uphold. And whereas with women, we tend to be more, I'll talk a little bit more about it later about gathering mode. We just collect all these details all the time. They pop into our head and we want to share them, and we just change our mind, and we don't think anything about that. So when they're slow to respond to us, we think they're stupid or not listening to us or trying to avoid us, and it's just not true. So on that aspect, when we listen from that point, men listen and they can disagree with you but still respect you. But when women listen and disagree, they will disconnect. You can kind of feel it in yourself. You feel, oh, that doesn't feel safe. So you start to pull back a little bit. And what you really need to do is make a conscious choice to listen intentionally. And the acronym I use when you listen intentionally is the word MIC, M-I-C. You are listening for what matters to a person, what's important to a person, and what a person cares about. When you listen for those things and not to disagree or agree, you really start to see that person who's in front of you. And they go from being this thing, like he's a man, you're objectifying him, or the vice versa. A man could go, well, she's just a woman. And they go from that to being this multi-layered, multi-dimensional, amazing creature that you get to know and spend time with.
That's so good. So, so good. I love this. And I know what you teach is also applicable to both, men and women and women together as well. That's the beauty of this book. It's really awesome. You have really done a lot of homework and research into putting this book together, Diane. I commend you for that. So listen more, talk less, give others your full attention. That is so important. We need to seek to understand them more before formulating our response. Well, that takes time. We got to listen with our ears and pause before responding, and take that time to think and pray. Choose our words that are gracious and truthful and build others up, because the Bible tells us to guard our tongues and not to cause division or harm, but to speak with purpose and care. And I know you're going to talk about that again. So I just want to ask you if you could break it down a little further with how do we listen to learn?
Okay, sounds good. Well, as I said, men are really committed to their answers. And that comes from something called operating modes. And I'll get into those a little bit more, but men have higher testosterone levels than women, just naturally. And that is a hormone that causes you to be very, very focused. And women have more estrogen than men, just naturally. And that causes us to have diffuse awareness. And so we are gathering all these details. And it just, if you can think about when women actually were gathering things for the tribe that they were in to survive, any detail that you saw, like the berry bush, was it ripe now? Would it be ripe in a few weeks? Were there animal tracks around it that you needed to be aware of that might mean danger? Was there something poisonous touching it, which meant the berries would be no good? All of those things at that point in time were literally life and death. And our instincts are still at work all these years later. And believe it or not, just think about a time you've stubbed your toe, and can you think about how you responded and how quickly, the intensity, all that stuff? That is your instinct. It's quicker than cognitive thought. And that's what we're trying to make ourselves aware of. When you get that real that you want to just go right at something, think, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's something here that I'm missing. But to do all this, you need a couple of tools. You might have heard me mention earlier, imaginary duct tape, and it's just what it sounds like. Answer one question, put on your imaginary duct tape, and the only reason you take it off is if they pause, and then all you say is anything else. Because
Wow.
you don't want to break their train of thought. I told you how committed they are to their thoughts. It feels really awful to men. Well, actually, I should take that back. Think about when you've been at work and you've been really focused on something and somebody walks up and you don't even know they're there. And you didn't do that intentionally. That was you being in hunting mode. And it just screened out anything that wasn't relevant to your current situation. Men pretty much live in that place.
Wow.
So when you interrupt them, it doesn't feel good. And you're not going to get a good response because they're trying to, whatever the goal is at that moment in time, they're trying to accomplish it. And I'm just looking at my notes to make sure to see if I have told you everything I want to. And I think for now, that's all we need to talk about for listening to learn.
Wow. That's really good. And again, part of that is being respectful too, just being respectful to that other person and what they are doing and thinking. And there's a way of approaching, right? Where if it's an emergency, you can do it without just interrupting. So,
right.
Yeah. So your book makes the reader aware of differences between the different relationships and people that you come in contact. And so with the men and women, there's something you talk about in your book called the hunting mode that you mentioned, and that has to do with men and women. So can you go into some depth so that we can see how you teach in the book that you and we at Women World Leaders are promoting?
Sure. There are two modes, and you can think of them like phones. Like, I have an iPhone, and you may have something that's maybe a Samsung. It's a totally different operating system, right? But you can do the same things. You can make a call, you can text, you can take pictures. You just get there a completely different route. So the two modes that we live from are hunting mode, where you have a specific goal. And that doesn't mean one thing. Again, back to men being dissed. That is a goal. Like if you think of a coach, they have the goal of winning, obviously. But inside that goal, there's a lot of things they have to be aware of. They have to be aware of offense and defense and special teams and penalties and all the different things they need to know about to be successful. So let's make that clarification, that men can definitely think about a lot of things at once. But it's, as I mentioned, like if you walk up on somebody who's been working, they are focused on that goal and they're not going to hear you because you walking up is not relevant to them at that point in time. It's not part of their goal. They're not blowing you off. They're not being rude. It's nothing personal to do with you. It's the mode they're in. The gathering mode for women, this picture just popped into my mind. If you're in a grocery store, ladies, and you have a cart, and you can think of gathering mode as the things on the shelf are just literally popping themselves right into your cart. And you're collecting them because you don't know when you're going to need them later. And that's what gathering. Your mind is constantly aware of all these details. And because of our instincts, it feels important that, well, I should share with you. Did you know that there's a sale on at the grocery store today? And your husband's probably going to go, no, and I don't care. But to you, it's important.
Yes.
Just because you might need to know that later. So learning how to recognize them in different people, then you know how to approach them. You want to be careful when you walk up on somebody that's in hunting mode, right? You don't want to interrupt them unless it's absolutely necessary. And men, they have to be aware that women do have this gathering mode aspect. And, they can be polite, but they can stop and say, could you tell me the point? I'm sure you've heard that because you're giving them so many details and it's like dumping 1,000-piece puzzle on top of them and they don't know what picture they're supposed to make.
Yes. So I fall in fault to that for sure.
Yeah. So those are the differences between the two modes. And one of my first experiences with it was going to dinner with my husband in the car, and we'd chosen a place. But as we're going down the road, and he's got his goal, right? He's going to get us to dinner, and he's going to get us there safely. Then I see another restaurant that could do similarly, and well, maybe he would like that better. And I tell him, "What about this restaurant? I just saw that over there." And he would get very defensive and grumpy and snap at me, because all of a sudden he doesn't know what the goal is. Are we going to the restaurant we picked, or are you changing the goal? Am I supposed to be taking you somewhere else? And if I am, I'm not ready for that, and I might fail. And you get snapped at, and you have no idea why he snapped at you. You were just being helpful and providing more information. So neither one of you were misbehaving there. He's trying to get you there safely. You're trying to give him all the information in the world. And your instincts bump into one another. The way I've resolved that for myself is, when we're going somewhere like that, if I see something, I'll make a note of it for myself. Then if we get to the restaurant and it's too busy, I can say, well, I noticed such and such back down the road. He's ready for more information at that point. But that's something I have to choose to do.
Yep. Wow. And be intentional, right?
Yeah, be intentional for sure. Intentional connection.
Absolutely. So your book helps cultivate humility, patience, recognizing that thoughtful words spoken in love are more effective and pleasing to God. And I love that about this book, Diane. And you're truly a blessing. And the fact that you and your husband have been married for 47 years now?
Actually coming up on 49 in a couple weeks. Yep.
49 years. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Like, that's huge. And it wasn't always perfect, but you were intentional to make it lasting when the troubled times come, because you saw value in searching out about relationships. And because of that, you have gone on to write this book to help others, because it worked in your life, right?
It did.
So
yeah, we're 12 years past that time when I went to my first class.
that is so beautiful. And I just thank you for having a heart to care about other people and their relationships. And like I said, this isn't a book just about man and woman relationships. It could be about sister to sister. It could be about friend to friend, and all mother to daughter, mother to son, all of those. So what final thoughts can you give to the listener, Diane, about your book, Don't Let Misunderstanding Win?
I think the thing I would want people to think about as they approach the book is, what do you want out of a relationship with anybody, whether it's romantic or children or parents or work? What do you want? Do you want someone to blame because things aren't going well, and so you just want to be able to be angry at somebody and get that out? Or do you want, maybe you're comfortable with the way things are going, but things could be better, but it's just too scary to think about maybe doing something different and taking a different approach to life and trying something new? And the thing is, when you're doing that, you're discounting the benefit of our differences if you don't want to make changes, if you don't want to take that risk, because it's just too scary to do it. But I'd like to give you an example of where differences really complement one another, and we can apply it to ourselves all the time. If you hold an avocado and you hold a lime, both of those things are green, both of those things are fruit, both of those things have seeds. But if you bite into that avocado expecting that lime, you're going to be really disappointed. You're going to be upset. And depending on the kind of day you're having, you might even get mad. That's what we do when we expect the people around us to respond and think the same way we would.
Wow.
Yeah. I discovered my first weekend away that the way I saw my husband and why he was so upsetting to me was he was a big, hairy, misbehaving woman. Because he didn't think, act, or respond the way I would. And my only point of reference at that time was from a woman's point of view.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that's study and research and teaching. I've discovered that it's really worth learning the other person's perspective.
Wow, that's so good. And it's not being selfish in
Mm-mm.
relationships, right?
No,
Because you are
no.
taking that time to invest in your relationships and learn the differences about how we operate. And everybody
Mm-hmm.
is different, right? So
Yeah.
we all have different ways of communicating, and we have to respect that. So, Diane, I know that again we had touched about this book being for so many different types of relationships, and thank you for sharing on that. And the book goes into greater detail on it. Um, but could you, as you wrap this all up, close us in prayer and pray for the listener right now that is in major need of some help in their relationship? Could you pray specifically for them?
I will. And as I get ready to do that, Kimberly, there's one thing I would like to put out there, that this is not just, I think you touched on it, between men and women. It's because of our operating modes. If you have the language, if you understand this, it can improve relationships with the same gender. I
Mm-hmm.
have a client that is a professional author, works out of her home, and when she heard this information, she was totally shocked. And I asked her what was going on, and she said, when my daughter knocks on my office door and I'm working, she said, I do snap. What do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, but then other times she'll knock and I'll just want to know all the details of her day. Come sit with me, and tell me everything. And she said, that poor child has had two parents in the same body.
Wow. Yes.
So I'm going to pray from there that we would be able to um, see our differences in everyone around us and see how wonderfully God has made them.
Mm-hmm. I pray
So,
that
Father,
too.
thank you for this time to be here today and to share with Kimberly and with all our listeners that what we're doing here is learning to grow and appreciate in the wonderful ways that you have made us so uniquely different and special. And you teach us that, Father, through snowflakes, through sunrises and sunsets. Everything is similar, but it's unique. And we have the opportunity to see that beauty because of you inside of us. Be our courage to look at ourselves for where we need to own up to the responses that we are triggering,
Mm.
and that we get to make a choice of whether we want to continue that behavior or try something new and trust you to lead us through that. And Father, be the healer. Like, where I remember being so raw when I started this journey with you, Father, to learn more about myself and relating with other men and women. And there had just been too many misunderstandings. And it just made me so raw that it didn't take much to set me off. I ask for your healing balm, Father, on all those raw places in all these lives, so that they could heal up and enjoy the gift of the love and the people that you have around them. And I ask confidently, Father, because of who your son Jesus is and what he has done. Amen.
Oh, amen. Amen. Thank you, Diane. And thank you, listeners, so much for joining with us today. And, even in all the relationships that seem to be going awry, and you're thinking, how am I ever going to get out of this one? I really did a doozy because I messed up. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't listen properly. I caused a lot of problems, but Romans 8:28 always shares that God allows everything, he causes everything to work together for the good to those that love
Mm-hmm.
him and are called according to his purpose. And he also says to call on him when we're in trouble with our relationships. And he says,
Mm-hmm.
I will rescue you and you will give me the glory. And that's Psalm 50, verse 5. And that's one of the things we do here at Women World Leaders is when we realize we've messed up, we work on that to resolve with God. And then we can share about that, just like Diane learned in her marriage. She's still married now, 49 years. That's huge. And she's sharing with you what she's learned. And now she's giving God the glory because she wrote this because he called her to this purpose. So we thank you for the book, Diane. Don't let misunderstanding win. And how could the listener reach out to you if they want to reach you? Can you share your website again?
Yeah, my website is hopewithoutlimits.com. And you can email me. That's Diane with one N at hopewithoutlimits.com. I'd be glad to hear from you.
Wonderful. Diane is also a woman world leader. We are thankful to have her on board with us at this ministry. And so you can always reach out to us to find her as well. And I know she is so gracious to talk to anybody that would want some advice and some help. But this book, don't miss out. And it is available on Amazon. It's available through World Publishing and Productions, whichever way you want to find it. Please get a copy of this book. It helps in all relationships. And as we close out today, again, thank you, listener, for being with us. Thank you, Diane, for sharing. God bless you all. And from his heart to yours, we are Women World Leaders. All content is copyrighted by Women World Leaders and cannot be used without expressed written consent. God bless you all, and thank you again for joining in.